Hey, sickos. I'm LJ.
And I'm Toe.
And this is...
Don't Tell My Therapist.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today for our first episode of Don't Tell My Therapist.
Absolutely. We are so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. We actually recorded this whole episode last night. This is a learning curve. We're underqualified.
We recorded the entire episode last night, and then we had audio issues.
Formatting issues. So we just completely changed the hosting site that we're using.
Yes.
And we're going to take another whack at this. The good news is that after we recorded last night, we were like, damn, we did a good job. The actual story was great. We're hilarious too.
We're a hoot. So you guys are going to want to stick around and listen to this one because we're a good time.
Yeah. And double good news, actually. So this episode was originally going to be about two different people, two stories. Mm-hmm. But when we recorded last night, we're like, oh, this is enough for 2 episodes. So the good news is you're going to get this episode over 2 episodes. So you're welcome.
Yay.
Yes.
So today we are starting our series.
Yeah. So this is the Florida Man series is what we're going to call it. This is going to be the first volume in that installation.
LJ is a Florida native, so she is very qualified to do this.
This is the only thing I'll ever be qualified to teach you guys. Yeah. And I've always been into spooky stuff. I remember being in, 4th grade or so, and I went to a Catholic school. I come from a big Catholic family. It was one of 8 kids. And I got in trouble because at a sleepover, we were playing with Ouija boards.
Oh, the Ouija board sleepover.
Yeah. And I'm like,
haven't we all?
Don't do it.
Yeah, guys, seriously, don't do it.
Yeah. Sleepovers are for polyfucking pockets, not for summoning demons to your home.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do not recommend. I was a little bit older, though. I was, in my teenage years.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of stuff that I'm not going to say on the open internet for career purposes, but we made, actually, a homemade Ouija board.
That sounds beautiful. Frightening, actually.
No, we were too broke to afford, the store-bought Ouija board.
Right.
Because anytime our parents gave us money, we spent it on, things we weren't supposed to be spending it on.
Right.
It was so ghetto. We took this, if you know, the particle board that, cheap furniture is made out of?
Yeah. Like IKEA.
Yeah, exactly that. It was, a piece of that. I don't remember what it came from, but it was that. And then we did the letters with nail polish, actually.
Oh.
And then we used a shot glass as our, little moving doohickey.
Of course we
thing.
did. Of course.
Yeah.
What else would we use?
Well, that's actually what Google told us to use.
Oh.
So.
Thank God for the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, a lot of weird shit started happening.
Yeah. No, me too. When I was a kid, like I'm still, my parents ended up bringing in a priest to bless my house because weird stuff was happening.
Right. Yeah.
And personally, and I know this might sound dramatic and maybe not, but I still feel like I've had like really bad luck in my life, possibly because
you objectively have had really bad luck in your life.
Well, yes, I know I've objectively had bad luck in my life, but I feel like it's because of the demons.
Should have let you finish. Yeah, I feel like you have, bro.
No, I mean, like, we can definitely confirm my life is trash, but I just kind of like, I think it's because of the demons. I shouldn't have played with the Ouija board, and I've been punished for like 20 years because of it.
Maybe same though.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Ouija boards, kids. It's not good. That being said, communication with spirit is a natural experience.
Yeah.
We're not saying, and that's been proven time and time again through mediumship. Like I've attended a metaphysical church since I was 18 years old, and we're not going to get into faith and religion here. That's not what we're here for, but we're not saying that communication with spirit is a bad thing.
There are just certain things that you shouldn't mess with.
To go about things. Yeah. There's a time and a place.
And if you don't do things appropriately, you are opening yourself up to a variety of things. Absolutely. Some of them are very dark, very powerful.
Absolutely.
And we just don't recommend anything like that. It just, you don't realize how vulnerable you are.
Don't mess with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
You want to talk to spirit, meditate about it.
Absolutely.
There are great mediums out there that you can go see.
Yes.
Options are available to you.
100%.
Leave the Ouija board alone.
Yes.
Great.
Glad we had that talk.
So thrilled.
God. Okay.
Moving forward.
Moving forward.
Let's just get straight into today's episode. So today we are beginning our Florida Man series.
What? Yeah, and I think the way that we're going to do this, just for a little bit of context moving forward, is Toe and I are pretty much going to, like, alternate episodes. So, like, she'll do an outline for one, I'll do an outline for one. We're kind of going to, like, we've skimmed and have, like, a general idea of what each other is doing, so it doesn't get to be too redundant. But in terms of, like, the nitty-gritty details of the case, we really don't know each other's
cases. So it's going to kind of be a little bit of a blind reaction.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so for today's episode, we are going to Key West, and we're going to be talking about the OG Florida man, Mr. Robert Eugene Otto, and his childhood doll. And his childhood doll is actually now known as the most haunted doll in the world. So to kick things off, I just want to give a quick rundown on haunted dolls in general. In some of the research that I was doing, I read some information from a sociologist who specializes in fear. Her name is Dr. Margie Kerr. And she says that while our childhood experiences with dolls may have been a source of joy, comfort, or even safety, that seeing dolls out of context can freak us out because it feels like the ultimate betrayal of innocence.
Ooh, that checks out.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like a juxtaposition, if you will.
Okay.
She just nodded at me like, that was a big word. Something that's like two polar opposites. Like, they. Okay. So aside.
She's good with words, but she can't even change a freaking flat tire, so.
I definitely can't. We have different strains.
Absolutely.
So aside from the psychological explanation, there's also a supernatural connection with dolls. So I found another source where a paranormal researcher and author, her name is Rosemary Ellen Guiley, she says that dolls have historically served as links to the spirit world and afterlife and as conduits of magic, saying that throughout history, dolls have been made to attract and house spirits that can be summoned forth in ritual. And she notes that the dolls top the list of things most likely to have residual haunting attachments. Are you familiar with residual haunting attachments?
Vaguely.
So I was also vaguely familiar with residual haunting attachments, so I dug a little deeper into that. And in the psychic library, residual haunting attachments are defined as a place memory haunting, which is the most common type of haunting. In most cases, it does not involve a ghost or spirit interacting directly with the people who are witnessing it. The type of sighting is a remnant of a past traumatic event that happened at or near the location prior to someone's death.
Ooh, weird.
Yeah. So the same person, the paranormal expert, she had said that there are reasons for residual haunting attachments being so common in dolls. The most obvious is like a lot of people own dolls. That's just like a super common childhood toy.
I mean, that totally checks out.
Yeah, I think like pretty much most people
have some sort of doll or like action
connection to a doll. Yeah, or like a sibling who has a doll if that's not what they're into. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also, again, obvious, but not something that we usually think about, is that dolls replicate people, you know? And when you play with dolls, they're a representation of a human being. And in a child's play, they substitute for a living person and are kind of given a persona of their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
And so she was saying that people invest a lot of emotional energy in dolls, and that because dolls replicate people and are believed to have energetic links to the living, that they can be used in sympathetic magic. Are you familiar with sympathetic magic?
Ooh, like voodoo dolls and stuff?
Yes, that could be a type of sympathetic magic. I actually had never heard of sympathetic magic at the time that I read this, so I went on Webster to just see what I could find. Sympathetic magic is magic that is based on the assumption that a person or thing can be supernaturally affected through its name or an object representing it. So if you do something to the doll, that also happens to the person. So like you said, a voodoo doll would be a good example of that.
Yeah.
But aside from voodoo, it's also just saying that the more objects are handled, the more that they can absorb psychic and emotional energy from people.
Yeah, I think I have heard that before.
Yeah, and they say that, like, that energy builds up enough to create residue, which can be experienced by others after the doll has passed to new owners.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, so they said that spirits that lodge in dolls may not even be deliberately attached. Like, spirits who are attracted to the living can, in certain cases, even latch on to possessions that a person has. People who acquire haunted dolls often find experiences similar to like a poltergeist phenomena, where they're hearing things like disembodied voices. The doll seems to change positions or locations on their own. And just generally like spooky stuff that like 0 out of 10 would not sign up for voluntarily.
Yeah, absolutely will not sign up for. I think I'm going to throw every doll like
literally
in my house away after this.
Do you have a bunch of dolls in your house?
I have some remaining dolls from childhood. Because
I ought to burn them.
Honestly, yeah. I just might after this.
0 stars. Well, now that we've got a general background about hauntings, dolls, sympathetic magic, I think we have a sufficient foundation to really get into our case for today. So I'm going to start getting into Key West a bit here, which is going to kind of set the tone for the rest of our story where this takes place.
Love that.
Love it.
Into the thick of it.
Into the thick of it. Into the unknown. All right, here we go. So in 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon.
I'm sorry, 1513?
Yeah. We're really winding it way back here, baby.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, baby cakes.
What a history lesson.
What a history
like before
lesson.
Jesus?
No, this would be after Jesus.
Okay, great.
1513 AD, baby cakes.
Okay.
All right,
continue.
So thanks. Ponce de Leon claimed Key West for Spain. We're jumping all the way forward here. Keep up to 1845.
Big jump.
Big jump. Key West was effectively settled and developed by this point. And then by the 1900s, Key West became a profitable city. it was actually often referred to as a boom town, meaning Key West monetizes what they can while they have it, then moves on to the next big thing. So over the years, they were known for originally like their production of sponges, shrimp, turtles.
Turtles?
Yeah. But then they like used all their turtles.
What do you mean they used all their turtles?
You know, fam. They used all their turtles.
What is turtle production?
I don't know, like soup.
Soup?
Turtle soup.
Soup?
Turtle soup. Listen, I wouldn't put it in my mouth. I'm just saying they used their turtles. So they depleted like a fair amount of their resources. And that kind of led them to where they are today, now that they're one of the oldest settlements in Florida and also one of the richest in history, if I do say so myself. Their primary source of revenue is, of course, tourism. And a large part of their tourism industry is obviously their nightlife, but along with their nightlife is like their history of hauntings. They have a really good ghost tour industry set up. Yeah. Like haunting museums and stuff like that.
And apparently a lot of chickens running around, so I heard.
They do. And I wish that I could remember why, because when me and my late husband, like my husband passed away in 2021, so you guys will probably hear him come up from time to time.
Yeah.
But we went to Key West in 2021, and he was like this quiet, soft-spoken guy. He really was like kind of feral like us, doesn't really like people.
Yeah, he wasn't a big people
person. Not because he didn't want to be, but because he just had like anxiety stuff, you know?
Sure.
And so we were taking this Uber to go to...
He was kind of a hoot, though. When you got him to open up,
yeah. If he was comfortable with you, he was a riot.
Yeah.
So, now that said, on this particular night, obviously me and Ian were comfortable together, and we were Ubering to this wonderful restaurant. It was so good. But we were seeing these chickens everywhere. We were like, where are all these chickens coming from?
Just like run wild.
Yeah, and Ian, I distinctly remember because I was so taken aback because Ian does not do people. He like leaned into the Uber driver and he was like, "Excuse me, my good sir." Can you tell me, do you know why there are so many chickens here? Because it's like a coastal, like, beach town, and there are just, like, roosters strutting about. We're like, what is going on? But for the life of me, I cannot even remember why there are roosters there. I just remember him being like, "Excuse me, my good sir." Because I'm like, who says that? Like, he was really doing his best.
Oh, my God. He tried so hard. It's precious.
Did. It was 5 stars for effort. So, yeah, there are a weird amount of chickens in Key West. If you go there and find out why there are chickens, let me know.
Yeah,
drop a comment.
You could, like, drop a comment, or you could even email us at don'ttellmytherapistpodcast@gmail.com.
They're going to email us and be like, you bitches should Google it.
We really want to know about your chicken experience in Key West.
We want your chicken stories. Give them to me. Oh, God. So, yeah, lots of chickens in Key West. So now we're around the late 1800s, and this is where the story of Robert the Doll starts. It starts at the Artist House, which is located at 534 Eaton Street, Key West, near Duval Street. If you're ever in the area, I highly recommend just like walking by it. You can take a ghost tour, go by it. It's a beautiful house. It was built between 1890 to 1898 by the Otto family, and it's this beautiful colonial Queen Anne style home. Super pretty. Also super haunted, but you know, whatever.
Minor
details. Great to look out from the outside, though. The Otto family moved in 1898, and on October 25th, 1900, Robert Eugene Otto was born, making him a Scorpio Libra cusp, in case you wondered. And In terms of weaknesses, Scorpio Libra cusps are known for being possessive, dramatic, holding grudges, being conflict avoidant, and having an abnormal sense of self-pity, all of which will pretty much come into play later, I feel like, because he really do be checking those boxes.
Really do be checking those boxes.
Yes. Okay. With regards to the Otto family, there's a common misconception that the Ottos were wealthy due to a history of having doctors in the family. Eugene's father and grandfather were both doctors, but doctors then didn't make the type of money that they do today. They often gave their services for free to help people. It was almost like they cared about people and their welfare. So I know that's a concept.
Yeah, that is a concept.
That is a concept. So they did, like, rather than require payment up front, they were like, we should probably just make sure that our neighbor, Billy Joe up the road, just, like, doesn't die. So they were pretty good about that. They didn't, like, make a crazy revenue from keeping people alive. So the money that they did make actually typically came from pharmacies that they owned at this time. And that was true in the Otto's case as well. Eugene's father, Thomas, he did have a pharmacy across the street from his house. And that helped the family maintain a decent income, but they weren't the rich family that a lot of people imagined at the time. Many people also say that Gene's parents were unavailable to him, but expert David Sloan, he's the main historian on the subject of Robert the Doll in Key West and the author of Robert the Doll, the book, which I recommend you guys check out. I haven't personally read it yet, but I did read some excerpts that were a great resource for this case study. And he said that he just believes that this wouldn't have been the case, that Gene's parents would have been pretty available to him. His mom in particular would have been around a fair bit, and she would have had help around the house due to the size, which is where we're going to see another main character in the story come in. Her name is Emily, and she was the family maid. So, yeah, mom would have been home a fair amount. She wasn't out there doing doctor stuff all day or anything like that. She was around the house doing home care and taking care of Jane. With regards to the origin of Robert the Doll, there was a woman named Marguerite Steve who was a doll maker in Germany. She actually had health complications due to polio, but despite that, she developed a very successful company called Steiff, and this company produced specialty dolls. In 1902, she even aided in creating the first teddy bear, which had movable arms and legs.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, it is, except the movable arm and legs things comes into play later, and like 0 out of 10 recommend in this case.
I really don't like that.
Yeah, I feel like we could have left their arms and legs immobile, and I would have been okay with that. But yeah, this Steiff company actually produced the doll that would later be known as Robert. This doll was 40 inches and stuffed with...
Oh my God, wait, why is he so big?
Boy, he's large and in charge. Move, bitch, get out the way.
I hate that.
I know, 40 inches is like far too long. I know
That's
they say...
way too big. That's like as big as RL.
Yeah, my daughter is like 6. And yeah, no, she's less than 32 inches, actually.
Yeah. So it's like bigger than her.
Yeah, that's far too large, actually.
I hate that.
Yeah. Would not love it. Yeah, so he's 40 inches of pure freaking terror and he's stuffed with woven straw.
I can't. I really can't.
Yeah, so he arrived in 1904, and like I said, he was made by the Steiff company in what we know now as Germany, but at the time, this was Prussia, for the record. So historians state that Eugene's mom was visiting Prussia in 1904 and brought the doll back to Eugene when he was just 4 years old. To make this even more disturbing, the doll was actually originally a 40-inch clown.
Ooh. No, wait, he was 4 years old? Like, the doll was probably bigger than him.
It probably was at the time. So earlier I mentioned Emily, the family maid. Yeah, legend said that she was a Bohemian woman who was practiced in voodoo, and that she was the one who gave Eugene the doll. But like we just kind of went over, that has been debunked. We know that the doll was not given to Gene by Emily. It was definitely
came from his mom.
Yeah, like that has been fact checked by historians. So we know that for sure. But we also know is that when Gene received the doll, he became extremely attached to that. And he even gave the doll his own legal name, which we said in the beginning is Robert Eugene Otto. So he began going by Gene, and his doll took on his first name of Robert. The suit
that's weird.
Yeah, that's objectively weird.
I feel like there's got to be like some trauma there. Like,
I don't know. All I know is that like in today's day and age, 2023, if that's a behavior that your child is exhibiting, you would be like beating down the door of a therapist.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. There's something to be said for that. That's just like disordered, dysfunctional. That's like a little next level. That's not just like, I like my toy.
Yeah. No, don't like. 0 stars.
So it only escalated from there. The suit that Robert the doll now even wears, but also wore at the time, is actually clothing of Gene from when he was a boy.
Ooh, hate that.
Yeah. No, 0 stars for that as well. So one of the major beliefs passed along in local lore in Key West is that Emily became pregnant with Thomas Otto's child.
Scandalous.
Yeah, that would have been super scandalous for the time, especially. I mean, it'd be scandalous by today's standards.
Now. Like if my husband knocked up the maid.
The maid's just like still living there doing her maid thing.
Yeah.
That would be a problem for me. Basically, the local lore says not only that Emily became pregnant with Thomas's child, but that she either miscarried the child or lost the child at some point.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is really sad.
That is sad, yeah, for sure.
And actually, part of that is verifiable. We don't know all the confirmed logistics for sure, because at this point in history, actual birth certificates, actual death certificates, these were not a thing. What we did have at this time was a census, which we still have today.
Love that.
Yeah, we do love a good census. And this does corroborate that, at least from what we know, that an additional child does show up in the household in the 1900 census. But this child does not show up in the 1905 census.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so that would indicate that somebody in the household had a child who, unfortunately, must have passed away.
And we know it wasn't Gene.
Yeah. Well, because he was a little boy.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean it wasn't Gene that passed away? I thought you meant it wasn't him that had the child. Because we know the rest of his life. Got it. Noted. Some help. Yeah. Okay. And also, Gene was born that same year in 1900. So it would have been 2 children that showed up in the household on the 1900 census. And there's nothing at all to suggest that Gene would have been a twin. And so, therefore, if there was another child in the household...
It was a love child.
It would have been a love child, logically speaking.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? See, I didn't even realize that Gene was born the same year. Can you imagine you're pregnant and your husband's mistress is also pregnant and living in your house?
Oh! Oh! Whew, girl. The hormones.
The hormones, the feelings.
Yeah, that would not be a good time.
The wife had to have not known that it was the husband. Like, that's the only way that everybody made it out of this situation alive.
I mean, yeah. I can't even imagine. I just can't imagine. Yeah, so just overall a bad situation. And again, they say that this child would have been Emily's and Thomas's love child. And pretty much what people widely believe is that Emily intentionally transferred the spirit of her child into this doll, like in some type of a voodoo ritual of sorts. But what's more commonly believed from, like, actual historians who, you know, have spoken with locals who were alive at the time and done their research and have the resources to actually make informed statements and opinions and not just dramatize this for the sake of the story. They say that it's very unlikely that Emily did any type of actual ritual. They say that they do think that the child's spirit could be attached to the doll, more from like a residual haunting or a sympathetic magic type situation that's not voodoo that we talked about earlier. Thomas and Marie, those are Jean's parents. You guys already know about our good friend Thomas, the cheater pumpkin eater. Hate, double hate. And Saint Marie, who didn't kill Emily. And so, yeah, they would often hear voices and laughter in the next room. And it's so sad. They would think that Jean had friends over to play, and they would get so excited because they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, poor Jean, he doesn't have any friends. Like, he's such a loner. And they would get excited and, like, go to check on him. But he never actually had a friend in there. They would open the door, and of course, he was playing with Robert. But there were, like, multiple voices that they heard behind the door, laughter, stuff like that. It got to a point where when Jean would get in trouble for something, he'd also start routinely saying that it wasn't him who caused the trouble. It was who? Robert. Robert did it. And then neighbors were beginning to have similar encounters, hearing Jean and Robert play together outside. Like, even the neighbors knew that Jean was like a kind of a standalone kid. He didn't really have friends like that. And so they would hear Robert playing with somebody, hear the two voices, and they would go to be like, oh, you know, Robert, you made a friend. No, he didn't. It's just him and Robert.
Just him and
Robert. And these things, like these encounters, both from the parents, from the neighbors, these are what ended up eventually catapulting the legend of Robert the Doll. So we're going to skip forward a bit to Gene's adult life. Gene grew up and he left Key West. He went on to study at the Academy for Fine Arts in Chicago.
Okay, that was really unexpected.
Yeah, I know. Like, didn't see that coming. Did he take Robert with him? I need to know.
No, I honestly, kind of shook about that.
I know.
It was like the last thing I expected.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem like the artsy type of guy.
No.
Seems more like the school shooter type of guy, honestly.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, not only did he study at the Academy for Fine Arts in Chicago, but then he went to the Art Students League in New York. He moved and traveled Europe. And when he went to Paris, he met Annette Ann Parker. We're going to refer to her as Anne throughout this because that's what she's most commonly referred to throughout historical accounts.
Perfect.
She was a Boston native, and she was studying music in Paris at the time and was a well-versed concert pianist. They ended up getting married in 1930 and moved from Paris to New York, where Eugene sold vintage furniture for a living.
Okay. Yeah, this is getting increasingly, weird.
Yeah, what are you doing? I don't know.
I'm impressed that he got married, though.
I'm impressed that he got married. I'm impressed that he got a job. I'm impressed that he went to college.
Yeah.
I mean...
Go Gene.
Well, give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. Exactly.
Still a Looney Tune, but at least at this point, he seems to be ticking, basic developmental boxes, which is better than he was doing in his childhood years.
We love that.
Yeah, so at least...
A win is a win.
Yeah, a win is a win. We'll give him that. There's really no great way to segue here, but at this point, Gene's mother ends up passing away, which is sad, of course. A couple months after that, Gene and Anne relocated back to the Key West house that we talked about earlier, the house that's now known as the Artist House.
Although I feel like this is where it gets weird.
Oh, because this is where it gets weird, baby cakes.
Love that.
Love it. And with regards to the marriage of Gene and Anne, this is where some rumors start in Key West.
Oh.
So these rumors say that Eugene was physically abusive to Anne. Now, that said, this isn't confirmed. And historians like David Sloan, who we mentioned earlier, they say that there's definitely confirmation that Gene was an emotionally abusive individual toward Anne. Like, we know this for sure.
Checks out, I think.
Yeah. But they do say that they feel that there's nothing credible to say that, like, 100%, like, Anne was physically abused. Like,
you know, I don't see it in this guy. I think he's, like, got a couple screws in his head loose, but, like, he doesn't strike me as, like, violent, intimidating.
Yeah, and I mean, by no accounts, here's the thing.
He's a doll person.
Yeah, like,
you know what I mean?
Everybody says, like, Gene is weird, right?
Yeah.
Gene is weird. They say, like, Gene doesn't treat his wife the best. But, you know, there are all these rumors that he's physically abusive. No one has ever seen him hit her, see him be physically violent with her. And I know that people can cover things up. But the thing is, too, like, Anne never said anything. There were never any physical signs in terms of, like, she never had any bruises. She never, you know, there was just nothing to actually corroborate that. Now, I mean, anything could happen, but in this case, there's just nothing verifiable to show that this is anything other than something that has been passed through the rumor mill, like playing a game of telephone where it's like, oh, he's emotionally abusive, and then suddenly it's like, oh, we punched her in the face. And it's like, well, you know, don't get me wrong, he did some shit, but he didn't, to anybody's verified knowledge, physically abuse her.
Sure.
Okay. So historians do have confirmation of some emotional abuse, though. These come from multiple, like, firsthand accounts where people were able to verify this. And, for example, Gene really liked things to be, like, in their specific place. And he would take photographs and things in a particular place and then ask Anne, like, where is this item?
Okay, so wait, what year was this?
I mean, this would have been, like, 1930s, 1940s.
Okay. And by all means, somebody out there that, like, knows things, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't taking a photograph, like, a huge production back then?
So I would have to do some research, but how I would imagine this would have to be done, I would imagine this would be, like, in a time period where you're, like, having to use, like, a black room, like, develop the film, you know, like,
I mean, you don't just, like, bust out your iPhone.
No, I mean, certainly it wouldn't be an instantaneous effort. Like, there would have to be, it's way more of, like, a multi-step process than it would be today.
Yeah, for sure.
So he had to be, like, pretty committed to this cause to, like, take photos, develop the photos, and then be like, the whatever isn't on this counter. I told you I wanted it here, and, like, take it out. Like, really? Like, get a better hobby.
Honestly, kind of ironic for a guy that has a doll that moves on its own.
Literally. Want to talk about things that should be in a place? Like a specific place? Contain your doll. So that's, like, one particular incident that was definitely verifiable. Also, Gene and Anne ended up becoming, like, successful artists. That's why the house is now known, of course, as the artist house. And this is where we see the family's financial success really begin. This is how they got their money. Not the family of doctors, but from their successful art endeavors. And Gene had these art openings at the East Martello, and he would tell Anne, like, don't come in for 10 minutes after I've entered the building, because he was, like, jealous of Anne's talent. And he thought that she's so talented, she's so beautiful, that, you know, she comes in, she's going to steal the limelight. And he wanted to have his time in the sun, damn it. He didn't want his wife taking his attention.
Fucking build a bridge and get over it, bro.
Literally, why get married if you hate your wife? That's what I want to know.
Honestly.
Just a ridiculous, like, behavior. Like, that's so irrational.
I mean, I think everything this guy does at this point is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that is an understatement. So, yeah, I mean, he had, like, OCD-type tendencies that would cause anxious outbursts, and he was definitely an oddball, definitely emotionally abusive. Moving on, it's not clear when Anne met Robert. I wish I could ask her. Like, I want to know, like, at what point does your man just whip out his 40-inch doll stuffed with woven straw that he has given his birth name?
Stop. Okay.
This has got to be after he's got a ring on it, right?
She's got to be trapped.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean...
That's how I envision this. Like, she's got to be in so deep that...
But, I mean, how did he hide it, though?
I don't know. It's unclear. Like, I wasn't able to find anything in my resources that said, like, if he took Robert to school with him, if Robert traveled with him. I would imagine, though, because they're joined at the hip, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he just kind of left Robert in the trunk.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
So, we don't really know. And I wish we had more information on that. But even the historians don't have an answer on that.
When Anne met Robert.
Yeah. And I tried to see if David Sloan, the expert, if he knew. But he's actually the one who said, I wish I knew. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but either way, Anne did at some point meet Robert. And
her direct quote on the matter was that she found him to be unsettling.
Unsettling.
It's literally the understatement of this century because little fam is unsettling AF. So, yeah, she found him to be unsettling. And remember, Gina's just becoming, like, increasingly irrational as time progresses. They've moved into this beautiful home. They should be, like, really thriving right now. Their art's doing great, but his behavior's getting to be erratic, more erratic, I should say, increasingly erratic.
Yeah,
and
enter Robert.
Yeah, and now enter Robert. So Jean asks Anne to give Robert a bedroom, and Anne is like, come again? She's like, you want me to what?
She's like, you gotta be fucking
yeah. But you know what, though? This is a sign of what the times were then. She gave this doll a room. Wife of the year, honestly. Give this girl a trophy.
Honestly, I don't know, though. I think Jean's mom might be wife of the year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the fact that she didn't kill the maid and her husband.
I mean, Anne is a close second. Like,
yeah.
Not to belittle Anne's struggle here.
Because clearly she had the patience of a saint.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that said, I mean, they
were both cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. And I mean, these were different times as well, where, like, women couldn't just, like, go and file for divorce. Like, that's not...
It just wasn't what you did.
No, it wasn't what you did. It wasn't an option that you had. If there was a scandal and, like, there was stuff going on with your husband at home...
You swept it under the rug and smiled on.
Absolutely. You dealt with it.
Dealt with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, so... And that's what Anne did. She gave Robert a room. And then... Do you know what Jean had the nerve to say after... God. Okay, well, first of all, I'll say... Small silver lining. This did appease Jean for a bit and Robert. They were happy with the room for a minute.
Mm.
And then Jean comes around and says, Anne, this room isn't going to do. Anne says, bitch, come again? What do you mean this room is not going to do? He says, Robert is angry. Robert wants a room with a view.
Oh, does Robert?
Does Robert? Oh, he does. I'm like, bitch, I want a room with a view too, but here I am in my apartment. So Anne did give him a room with a view. And do you know what that room was?
I can't even begin to fathom at this point.
Well, thankfully, Anne has her wits about her, and she's like, oh, you want a room with a view, Robert? You want a room with a view? I'll give you the fucking attic.
Yes, Queen.
Queen Anne. We love her. But here's the thing, though. So she gives
Always
him...
a catch with Robert.
There is. And she really thought that she was doing something, giving him the attic. She thought that... I'm sure she had to have thought, like, this was, like, Queen Petty move of the century. Like, you want a room with a view? Okay, you get the freaking attic.
Yeah.
Robert ends up... I guess, like, tormenting the neighborhood kids, basically. The neighborhood kids were reporting routinely that as they would walk home from school, they would see Robert looking out the window. He would move, he would watch them, and it really creeped them out.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it would really creep me out. Do not like. So, yeah, that was, like, pretty disturbing. And, again, this, like, built on all of the rumors in town that had already had this foundation from when Gene lived there when he was a boy. So now it was just beginning to escalate. There was actually a point when Anne had hired a plumber, but the plumber fled their home and actually refused to finish the job because he said that he could hear Robert laughing in the next room.
I mean, I would flee the home too.
Absolutely. I would be like, you're going to have to find a plumber who specializes in exorcisms, girly.
Absolutely. I mean, I would honestly, I would do more than flee. I would fly.
Yeah.
I would fly. I would run and take off and fly.
I would be playing. Yeah, no, there's nothing that you could do to make me finish any type of job in that home.
No.
So, yeah, I definitely resonate with the plumber on this one. Like, this was a subreddit for Am I the Asshole? It'd be like, nah, you're good. She was wrong for asking you to do this plumbing job to begin with.
Absolutely.
God. So, again, no great way to segue here. But unfortunately, at this point, Gene falls ill with Parkinson's. And now we're kind of entering the end of Gene's life. He did end up passing away from Parkinson's. But at the end of his life, you know, I don't know what most people would plan to do if they know that they're, like, on their last leg. I feel like you...
Maybe, like, skydive or, like...
spend time with family and loved ones.
Okay, that's a thing, too.
But what did Gene do? What do you think he did?
Oh, probably something with that freaking dog.
Yeah, he locked himself up in the attic with Robert. And he spent out, like, the last of his days just bonding with old Robbie over there.
I think you were bonded enough, Gene. Like,
yeah, literally, like, too bonded, many would argue.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's what he did. He became still more attached to this doll, if that's even a possibility. If you remember at the beginning of the story, he would say, like, oh, it's not me, it wasn't me, it was Robert. So old Gene up here, like, on his last leg, that's the same stuff he's doing with Anne now. I didn't abuse you, Anne.
That was Robert.
It was Robert. Like,
honestly, this woman, saint.
So, yeah, she put up with some shit. And what does she get for it? You're going to be heated. So, at the end of his life, Gene actually writes Anne out of the will.
No, the fuck he didn't.
Yeah, not entirely, but enough to completely screw her for the rest of her years, essentially. So, he did leave her the artist house itself.
Okay.
But he knew that Anne did not like Robert. So he actually left the contents of his home to his sister. Yeah.
Like, honestly, bro, just leave the fucking doll to your sister.
It was
and give your wife her shit.
Yeah, it was so petty because now Anna's lost everything that she owns, essentially. And you've got to remember, like, these are well-traveled, well-renowned artists. All of their value here is not in this sentimental family home, this, like, modest home.
It's in their things.
It's in their assets. Exactly. Yeah. Their personal property that's inside the home. This lavish artwork and the items that they've collected and acquired. It would have been more than enough for Anne to be able to, you know, kind of subsidize her lifestyle and live the last of her years comfortably in her family home. But instead, she had no option but to sell the artist home to a neighbor in 1974 so that she could move back home to Boston. Actually, the neighbors died shortly after due to carbon monoxide poisoning.
In the house?
In the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, almost as though Robert disagreed with the new arrangement.
Oh.
Yeah.
Honestly, Robert, you need to chill.
Yeah. Like, maybe just don't be like that.
Yeah.
That's an option that's available to you.
Like, was he left in the house?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but they don't know this because it's in a trunk in the attic at this point.
Oh, okay. So, like, you know, Jean's sister didn't do any better of a job of taking care of Robert.
No, absolutely not. She was just like, yeet. You know, these neighbors largely pass away. Anne ends up dying in Boston in 1976, and the home is given to the surviving neighbor. It's a woman named Myrtle, and this new owner finds Robert the doll in the trunk in the attic. Yes. Okay. So,
poor Myrtle.
Yeah. Myrtle ends up selling the artist house because of the whole thing with, like, the carbon monoxide poisoning and everything. She's just like, she's donezo, you know?
She's like, I'm going to wash my hands of that.
Yeah. She's just like, I feel like I could do better. Which Myrtle knew her worth. I'll say that.
We love that about Myrtle.
We do love that about Myrtle. You go, Glen Coco.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what I don't love about Myrtle is that when she left the artist house, who do you think she took with her?
Stop. She did not take Robert.
She took old Robbie boy. So Myrtle was now Robert's new companion. But Myrtle quickly begins to notice that something is off with this doll. Again, understatement. Absolutely. So she actually, 6 years later, ended up donating Robert the doll to the East Martello Museum in 1994. Fun fact, I was born that year as well, the year of Robert the doll's donation. So she claimed that Robert would move around, that he was haunted, and she warned the museum that the doll would, like, make people feel sick or possibly even kill them if they didn't like them. But she was afraid to get rid of it. She's like...
Yeah, I mean, I would be too.
I think it was smart to bring it to the museum.
Absolutely.
Because what else do you do with something of that nature?
Exactly. What else do you do?
Yeah. So she did really the smartest thing I think anybody really could have done in this situation and donated him to the museum. Unfortunately, if you can even believe this, Myrtle ended up dying 3 months later. She was otherwise completely healthy. And 3 months after donating Robert to this museum, she just drops dead. I don't know how or the cause or whatever, but it's widely reported that she was otherwise healthy up until this point. So sounds like David, the historian we've been mentioning throughout this, he spoke with neighbors of the Ottos, and the neighbors didn't even like talking about the doll because the neighbors felt that the doll kind of stole Eugene and Anne's legacy. Like, they were two talented artists who overall were known throughout the neighborhood as just being good people, and basically their legacy is overshadowed by this creepy little doll.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, which is kind of interesting because, you know, Gene, well, yes, Robert, that is his name that he gave to the doll, but, you know, Gene, for the sake of not confusing things here, he clearly had this issue with, like, he wanted his legacy to be known. He wanted to
be the center of attention.
Yeah, he didn't want Anne to be in the spotlight. He wanted to be in the spotlight. And now his legacy really is Robert, completely overshadowed with Robert. Like, I didn't know that this guy was, like, a successful, well-renowned artist at all. I knew him for Robert the Doll until I started researching for this case.
Honestly, karma's a bitch.
It's a bitch, Gene. Take note. So, Robert the doll actually didn't end up originally going on display in the museum, but he is now, because originally, Robert, you know, he would just be moved from one place and another in the museum without explanation. Like, he was not put on display, and then suddenly he was.
He just put himself on display?
He just put himself on display. And it got to a point where, like, you know, okay, fine, he's on display. They let him, like, have a display, but he kept moving himself to, like, a better display place.
Of course he did, because nothing's ever good enough for Robert.
Yeah. And this got to the point where this doll is, like, moving around so much is going on, that they actually constructed a display case in the center of one of their most prominent rooms to keep him confined and to ensure that he would feel adequately displayed. Staff members say that he'll tap on the glass of his display, turn his head, or follow them with their eye, or with his eyes, rather. And people who come to see Robert are warned to ask Robert for permission to take his photos and to thank him after taking the photos. Those who do not ask for permission will be cursed by Robert, and the evil spirits associated with Robert the doll will follow you home.
Oh, love that.
Don't love that. It's horrifying.
That was sarcasm.
I know, but still, just reiterating that I do not love. The museum receives countless letters annually from patrons apologizing to Robert, asking him to remove whatever curse he put on them. And Robert is known to mess with cameras. Like, if you take photos, the photos might be deleted or might be wonky, things like that. And patrons of the museum see his facial expression change. Many people claim to have seen the spirit of a mixed-race 5-year-old girl by Robert the doll.
Oh, no.
Yeah, which is interesting because, like we were talking about earlier, Emily and Thomas.
Baby.
Yeah. So that would check out because she would have foreseeably been
up to 5, right?
Yeah, up to 5, mixed race. And that would check out in terms of some type of residual haunting.
For sure.
Attachment.
Yeah.
Robert the doll is thought to be the inspiration for Chucky, like the iconic Chucky the doll. And I did not love this at all, but apparently you can buy a miniature Robert the doll replica.
Stop it.
Along with, like, his little teddy bear.
I want to know who made that executive decision. Like,
somebody with literally no regard for their own welfare.
Let's sell mini Roberts. That's a great choice.
Yeah, that's how, like, it's like the foundation for some type of little Robert apocalypse, you know?
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
That is terrifying.
So, like, if you guys go there, do your part and please don't buy a mini Robert.
Yeah, I actually, when I was, like, going through and watching videos and stuff like that, and, like, you know, looking up resources about Robert, I stumbled upon this one video on YouTube, and this gentleman had not only bought the doll, but had asked actual Robert, like, in the presence of Robert the doll at the East Martello Museum, to come home with him and play with his doll if he'd like. And he said, obviously, weird things have been happening with the doll since, which is like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Absolutely.
Like, you literally, because David Sloan, the historian, he says that, like, what historians widely believe, and historians aren't like, oh, like, the doll maybe is haunted, maybe it's not. They're like, nah, this is haunted. For real.
For real.
And they believe that it's not just haunted by the spirit of Emily and Thomas's would-be daughter. They believe that there are also 2 negative entities attached to it.
Right.
And those are the ones that they're like, be wary of it. Like, that bad energy can follow you, can harm you.
Absolutely.
So don't invite it into your home. I would highly recommend, if you ever have the opportunity to do the ghost tour with, like, in Key West, that you go and do it. It's a really, really positive experience.
Just, like, don't be a jackass about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, have respect for the situation. Have respect for yourself enough not to invite potentially harmful entities into your home. But, you know, do go and learn. It's a great experience if you have the opportunity.
For sure.
So that's really all the information I have on this case for this week. But we are going to have another episode that we're going to be sharing with you guys soon. We've got actually a few lined up.
Yeah, we have a couple. We have some great stuff lined up. I have a out there serial killer that I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
I think LJ has some other stuff lined up, so it's going to be good.
Absolutely. I've got another OG Key West weirdo. This guy, just like, general spoiler, he was, I believe, a radiologist, like a technician of some kind. I'll have to fact check the exact job description, but he was not like an official doctor. But he ended up, like, getting really attached to one of his patients and mummifying her.
Ooh,
yeah, so it's like a really involved story, but that's going to be our next Florida Man installment. So you have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for bearing with us. I know that this episode being a re-record, I think we could have done better. It's very hard. It's harder to re-record an episode than it is to record it.
Last night, the first time we tried to record this episode, so this is a re-record, and it's been a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, because you have that bar set of like the first episode being so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you want to recreate that, but also you don't want it to be like...
You want it to be organic.
Yeah, not like rehearsed and weird.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for bearing with us for this re-record. If you made it through this and you like it, definitely follow because our next episode's going to be better. I can promise you that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We look forward to growing with you guys.
Yeah.
And definitely, I guess we should like drop our handles and stuff.
Yeah. So we are on Instagram at Don't Tell My Therapist Podcast. We are on Facebook, Don't Tell My Therapist Podcast.
Yeah.
And we are on TikTok at Don't Tell My Therapist Pod.
Yeah.
And we also do have a Facebook group. So we have a Facebook business page and a group where you can actually join our group and interact directly with us.
Yeah. It'll be like very engaging, very personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to engage with you guys. So if you're not on Facebook or you're not a big social media person, if you have any like spooky stories that you want to share or maybe anything from the headlines that you would like to see us cover.
Yeah.
DM us on any of our socials.
Mm-hmm.
Or alternatively, you can email us at don'ttellmytherapistpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So if you have anything you want us to cover or you want to share your own story or you just want to tell us that we suck, that's fine too.
Like,
we want to hear from you guys.
You guys sounded too rehearsed, almost like you already recorded this.
We did, bitch.
We did. We told you that.
And it was a fucking nightmare.
Don't be a whore. We worked hard.
We worked really hard.
Literally, I think blood, sweat, and tears went into this episode. Yeah. So again, thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap this one up, but really look forward to seeing you guys. Yes, yeah. Seeing you guys on the next one.
Absolutely.
All right. Peace out.
That's all for now.
Bye.
Oh no! Did we perform a fuckaroonie?